Every human being eventually needs a toilet. That fact is ordinary. Yet hidden within that ordinary need lies an extraordinary question. The need is universal. The experience is not. Some people find certainty. Others find uncertainty. For a brief moment, every person becomes dependent on a system they did not build, do not maintain, and cannot personally control. This inquiry begins with a simple facility, not because toilets are important, but because they reveal what happens when people become dependent. Every human being faces the same need. Yet the experience of that need can be profoundly different. A toilet may be neglected, merely functional, well-maintained, inclusive, or deeply dignified. The physical need remains unchanged. What changes is the certainty, care, and respect surrounding it. These differences are not really about toilets. They reveal something deeper: how much attention a society gives to ordinary moments of human dependence, and how much dignity it chooses to provide when people need help. The same need exists everywhere. Yet different societies respond to it in different ways. That raises a deeper question. If the need is universal, why does the experience vary so greatly? The answer cannot be found in the toilet alone. It lies in the choices made behind it. What is prioritized? What is maintained? What is funded? And what responsibilities a society chooses to carry? This inquiry begins with that question. The first question asked why the experience differs. The second asks whether we have been looking at the right thing. Perhaps toilets are not merely facilities. Perhaps they are clues. A society's response to an ordinary human need reveals something about how it views responsibility, care, and dependence. The toilet becomes a window into something larger. Not a study of sanitation. A study of how societies choose to care for people when help is needed. The inquiry began with a simple observation. Every human being eventually becomes dependent, not only in moments of illness, disability, or age, but in countless ordinary moments throughout life. The question is not whether dependence exists. It always does. The deeper question is what happens next. Civilization can be understood as the collective effort to respond to human dependence in ways that preserve dignity, reduce uncertainty, and allow people to continue living ordinary lives. Most studies of civilization begin at the top. They examine governments, economies, technologies, and monuments. This inquiry begins somewhere else, at the bottom, with something so ordinary that it is noticed only when it fails: a public toilet. At first glance, it seems an unlikely place to study civilization. Yet it occupies a unique position in human life. It reveals what happens when an ordinary human need meets a public system. That is what makes the toilet interesting. It reveals what happens when human beings become dependent. The first instinct when examining toilets is to focus on what can be seen. Are they clean? Are they modern? Are they comfortable? Are they easy to find? These questions matter. But after a while, another question begins to emerge. Why are they the way they are? What produces these different experiences? At first, the toilet appears to be the subject of the inquiry. Gradually, something changes. The facility begins to look less like an object and more like a clue pointing beyond the visible experience, toward the priorities, assumptions, and choices that made that experience possible. The toilet becomes a mirror. What you see reveals what a society values. Once viewed through this deeper lens, a public toilet begins revealing far more than sanitation. Consider what happens when a person needs one. For a brief moment, they become dependent, not on themselves, but on a system they did not create and cannot personally control. That moment is remarkably universal. The executive, the laborer, the tourist, the student, the billionaire, the retiree, all eventually arrive at the same human reality. And when they do, society responds. Sometimes well, sometimes poorly. That response is what makes the toilet so revealing. The toilet is not a study of sanitation. It is a study of how societies respond when people become vulnerable. By now, a pattern should be emerging. Public facilities reveal more than facilities. They reveal how societies respond to human need. Behind every toilet lies an answer to a larger question. How should society respond when people need help? The facility itself is only the visible surface. Beneath it lie choices about access, maintenance, governance, care, and dignity. What appears to be infrastructure is also philosophy. Not philosophy written in books. Philosophy expressed through everyday experience. We began with a toilet. We now arrive at a deeper inquiry. Infrastructure is philosophy made visible. As the inquiry moves deeper, a new question emerges. If dependence is unavoidable, someone must carry the burden it creates. That burden may be physical, financial, administrative, emotional, or simply the effort of navigating daily life. Every society must decide where that burden will reside. Some place more on institutions, others on communities, markets, or individuals. The burden never disappears. It is usually relocated. When life becomes easier for one person, effort has often been absorbed elsewhere. Civilization is therefore, in part, the ongoing allocation of burden. Who plans? Who maintains? Who pays? Who adapts? The answers shape everyday life more than most people realize. When people think about burden, they often imagine effort. Hard work, time, money, responsibility. Yet many burdens are experienced in a different form. Imagine arriving in an unfamiliar place and needing a toilet urgently. The difficulty may not come from walking. The difficulty may come from not knowing where it is, not knowing whether it exists, not knowing whether it is accessible, not knowing whether it will be usable when found. The physical effort may be small. The uncertainty may be large. This distinction matters because uncertainty affects human experience in powerful ways. People can tolerate effort surprisingly well when outcomes are predictable. What often creates stress is uncertainty. The uncertainty of not knowing. The uncertainty of depending on something that may or may not be there. The uncertainty of having to discover reality while already under pressure. Many burdens therefore operate through uncertainty. The burden is not simply carrying a weight. The burden is carrying unanswered questions. And once we begin viewing burden through this lens, a deeper insight emerges. Perhaps societies are not merely distributing resources. Perhaps they are distributing uncertainty. Once uncertainty becomes visible, it becomes possible to examine it more carefully. Not all uncertainty is the same. Different forms affect people differently. Consider the experience of needing a public facility. The first question is often, can I find it? This is location uncertainty. Then comes another question. Can I use it? This is access uncertainty. What condition will it be in? This is quality uncertainty. How much thinking or planning is required? This is cognitive uncertainty. As we move deeper, other forms emerge. Can I trust strangers? Can I trust institutions? Can I trust the system itself? Each represents a different kind of uncertainty. And each creates a different kind of burden. What makes this important is that societies rarely eliminate uncertainty completely. Instead, they choose which uncertainties to absorb and which to leave behind. Some make facilities easy to find. Others make them easy to access. Others make their quality predictable. Others rely on citizens adapting to uncertainty themselves. The visible experience changes. The underlying principle remains. Civilization often consists of deciding which uncertainties people should carry and which uncertainties society should absorb on their behalf. At first glance, societies appear to distribute facilities. Roads, schools, hospitals, transport systems, public amenities. Yet beneath this visible distribution lies another, the distribution of uncertainty. Consider two hypothetical societies. In the first, people generally know what to expect. Facilities can be located easily. Rules are clear. Experiences are predictable. Uncertainty has been absorbed into planning, maintenance, and governance. In the second, facilities may still exist. Yet people must constantly determine where things are, whether they are available, what conditions they will encounter, and what rules apply. The resource exists. The uncertainty remains. This distinction changes how everyday life feels. Because uncertainty never disappears. It simply moves. If citizens carry less uncertainty, institutions often carry more. If institutions carry less uncertainty, citizens often carry more. The uncertainty always exists somewhere. This insight extends far beyond toilets. Healthcare, housing, education, transport, public services. In every domain, societies are making decisions about where uncertainty should reside. And those decisions profoundly shape lived experience. The deeper difference between societies may therefore lie not in what they provide, but in what they expect people to worry about. Most comparisons between societies focus on averages. Average quality, average satisfaction, average accessibility, average performance. These measures are useful, but they conceal something important. Variance. Imagine two societies. In the first, almost every facility is reasonably good. Not perfect, not extraordinary, but consistently reliable. In the second, some facilities are exceptional while others are poor. The average quality may be similar. The lived experience is not. This distinction matters because people do not experience averages. They experience individual encounters. A person does not use the average toilet. They use one toilet. A patient does not receive average healthcare. They receive one treatment. A commuter does not travel through average infrastructure. They travel through a specific system on a specific day. Variance therefore reveals something deeper than capability. It reveals consistency. It reveals governance. It reveals whether care is distributed widely or concentrated unevenly. The best facility in a society tells us what that society is capable of building. The ordinary facility tells us what that society is willing to provide consistently. And perhaps that is the more important measure. Because excellence can be isolated. Consistency must be systemic. By this point in the journey, the focus has moved far beyond facilities themselves. We are now beginning to examine the deeper structures that shape human experience. The next step is to explore one of the most important distinctions in the entire framework: the difference between capability and governance. The distinction between capability and governance may be one of the most important insights in this entire framework. At first glance, they appear similar. Both can produce impressive outcomes. Both can create functioning systems. Both can generate public confidence. Yet they answer very different questions. Capability asks, what can this society achieve? Governance asks, what does this society provide consistently? Capability is often visible in exceptional examples. A landmark building, a world-class airport, an advanced technological achievement, a showcase project. These reveal what is possible when talent, resources, and effort are concentrated. Governance reveals something different. It appears in ordinary experiences. The daily commute, the neighborhood facility, the routine public service, the reliability people encounter repeatedly throughout their lives. This distinction matters because societies are often judged by their highest achievements. Yet human beings spend most of their lives in ordinary encounters. A civilization may possess extraordinary capability while delivering uneven everyday experiences. Another may possess fewer spectacular achievements while providing remarkable consistency. The first demonstrates excellence. The second demonstrates distribution. And distribution may be the deeper achievement, because making something extraordinary is difficult. Making something ordinary and reliable for millions of people may be harder still. Capability builds peaks. Governance shapes landscapes. And human beings live primarily in the landscape. As the inquiry continues, the focus shifts once again. The question is no longer simply about facilities, or uncertainty, or governance. It becomes a question about vulnerability. Every human life contains moments when help is needed, moments when independence is not enough, moments when we must rely on something beyond ourselves. Civilization is often revealed in those moments. Not when people are strong, but when they are vulnerable. The tree does not remove the rain. It provides shelter when shelter is needed. A society serves a similar purpose. The deepest question is not what exists, but what happens when people need help. Because the measure of civilization is ultimately found in how it responds to human vulnerability. Beneath dignity lies another layer: trust. Trust is one of the most important forces in civilization precisely because it is often invisible. Consider a functioning public facility. Running water, lighting, soap, clean surfaces, working infrastructure. All these things depend upon an assumption that the facility will remain usable, that people will generally cooperate, that dependence will not immediately be exploited. This is what makes infrastructure more than a physical system. It is also a social system. Every shared facility rests upon an unspoken belief. Most people will cooperate most of the time. Where trust is strong, systems can remain relatively open. Rules can remain simpler. Monitoring can remain lighter. People can depend more confidently on one another. Where trust is weaker, systems often compensate through enforcement, supervision, auditing, and control. These mechanisms can be effective, but they are not trust. They are substitutes for trust. This distinction matters because civilization requires cooperation among people who may never meet. Most people do not maintain the roads they use, generate the electricity they consume, operate the water systems they depend upon. Yet they rely on these systems every day. Civilization therefore becomes a remarkable achievement, an agreement among strangers, a vast network of cooperation sustained by sufficient trust to make dependence possible. Once trust becomes visible, it becomes clear that trust itself is not a single phenomenon. It exists in multiple forms, and these forms often operate simultaneously. The most familiar is interpersonal trust. Trust between people. Can strangers behave reasonably? Can everyday interactions occur without constant suspicion? Yet civilization depends on other forms as well. There is trust in institutions. Trust that organizations will fulfill their responsibilities. Trust that commitments will be honored. Trust that public information can be relied upon. There is trust in processes. Trust that applications will be handled, that rules will be applied consistently, that procedures will continue functioning tomorrow as they do today. There is trust in infrastructure. Trust that trains will arrive, that water will flow, that systems will operate when needed. And beneath all of these lies a deeper form: moral trust. The belief that vulnerability will not be exploited, that dependence will not automatically become disadvantage, that help can be sought without humiliation. This may be the deepest form of trust because it shapes how people experience dependence itself. When trust is abundant, life often feels effortless. When trust becomes scarce, even simple activities become difficult. Trust therefore behaves much like infrastructure. Invisible when functioning, immediately noticeable when absent. Trust helps explain how systems function. Governance helps explain why they function the way they do. Governance is often confused with government. Yet they are not the same. Government is an institution. Governance is a pattern, a way of organizing responsibility, authority, accountability, and coordination. Most people never encounter governance directly. Instead, they experience its consequences. A clean facility, a reliable service, a functioning transport network, an accessible public space. These experiences appear simple, yet behind them lies a long chain of decisions. Values influence priorities. Priorities influence policies. Policies influence resource allocation. Resource allocation influences infrastructure. Infrastructure shapes human experience. By the time a person encounters a public facility, they are experiencing the final result of many earlier choices. This is why infrastructure can be understood as governance made visible. A toilet is not merely a facility. A station is not merely a building. A hospital is not merely a service. Each represents accumulated decisions about what matters. What should be funded? What should be maintained? What responsibilities should be assumed? What burdens should be absorbed? The visible world, therefore, becomes a map of invisible choices. And the more closely we examine ordinary experiences, the more clearly those choices begin to appear. At this point in the journey, we have moved from facilities to governance. The next step is to move deeper still, to examine the cultural assumptions and worldviews that shape governance itself. We have now reached one of the deepest layers of the framework. Until now, we have explored facilities, burden, uncertainty, trust, governance, and dignity. Yet a question remains. Where do these patterns come from? Why do societies organize themselves differently in the first place? To answer that question, we must look beneath governance. We must look beneath institutions. We must look beneath policy. We arrive at culture. And beneath culture, something deeper still. Cosmology. Cosmology refers to a civilization's underlying assumptions about reality itself. Its assumptions about human nature, about obligation, about community, about responsibility, about order, about the relationship between the individual and the collective. Most people rarely think about these assumptions because they are inherited rather than chosen. They feel natural, obvious, self-evident. Yet over generations, they quietly shape everything that follows. Assumptions influence values. Values influence institutions. Institutions influence governance. Governance influences infrastructure. Infrastructure shapes daily life. This is why societies that possess similar wealth, technology, and resources can nevertheless feel profoundly different. The visible differences often emerge from invisible assumptions. What people encounter in daily life may ultimately reflect ideas formed long before any particular facility was ever built. The deepest forces are often the least visible, yet they shape everything above them. Throughout this journey, a recurring pattern has emerged. What first appeared to be separate topics have gradually revealed themselves as parts of a single architecture. The toilet, burden, uncertainty, trust, governance, dignity. These are not isolated concepts. They are connected layers within a larger system. Each layer helps explain the one above it. Each layer is shaped by the one below it. This allows us to see the framework as a chain. At the surface, we encounter facilities. Visible, concrete, everyday. Yet beneath them lie design philosophies. Ideas about how systems should serve people. Beneath those philosophies lie assumptions about burden. Who should carry it? How much should remain? Beneath burden lies uncertainty. Beneath uncertainty lies trust. Beneath trust lies governance. Beneath governance lie values. And beneath values lie deeper assumptions about reality itself. This chain matters because it changes how we interpret problems. Instead of asking only, "What happened?" we begin asking, "What assumptions produce this outcome?" A facility may be difficult to find. A service may be inconsistent. An experience may feel burdensome. These are visible symptoms. The deeper causes often lie elsewhere. The visible world becomes easier to understand when we learn to see the layers beneath it. And perhaps that is one of the central lessons of this framework. The surface rarely explains itself. Most people notice systems only when they fail. A delayed train, a broken lift, a power outage, a missing facility. Failure attracts attention because it interrupts life. Success often goes unnoticed. And this leads to one of the most important ideas in the entire presentation. The highest achievement of infrastructure is not visibility. It is invisibility. Not because it is hidden, but because it no longer demands attention. When systems function well, people stop thinking about them. The facility is already there. The path is already clear. The maintenance has already happened. The burden has already been absorbed. Nothing dramatic occurs. And that is precisely the achievement. This introduces a different understanding of care. Most people associate care with visible action. Helping someone. Responding to a request. Solving a problem. These are genuine forms of care. Yet another form exists. Care that occurs before the need is even felt. The problem never becomes a problem. The uncertainty never becomes anxiety. The burden never becomes visible. This is care expressed through design, through maintenance, through foresight, through systems. The better it functions, the less people notice it. Which means some of the most humane achievements of civilization often pass entirely unnoticed. And perhaps that is exactly what makes them remarkable. Modern societies often celebrate independence, self-reliance, autonomy, self-sufficiency. These values are important, yet they can sometimes obscure a deeper reality. Civilization itself is built upon dependence. Consider everyday life. Most people do not generate their own electricity, grow all of their own food, manufacture their own medicine, build their own roads, maintain their own communications infrastructure. Every human life depends upon systems created and maintained by others. This is not a flaw. It is the foundation of civilization. One of the most common misunderstandings is to treat dependence as weakness. Dependence becomes a problem only when it is poorly organized. When systems function well, dependence becomes cooperation, interdependence, civilization. This shifts the question entirely. Instead of asking, "How can dependence be eliminated?" we begin asking, "How should dependence be organized?" The need remains. The dependence remains. Only the experience changes. The toilet reveals this reality unusually clearly. The need cannot be removed. The dependence cannot be removed. The only thing that changes is what happens next. Will the experience be predictable or uncertain? Dignified or stressful? Simple or burdensome? That depends on how society chooses to organize dependence. And that question extends far beyond toilets. It reaches into every institution civilization creates. If dependence must be organized, societies face another question. How should problems be solved? One recurring distinction appears again and again. Expansion and optimization. Both seek to improve human experience. Yet they proceed differently. Expansion asks, can we provide more? More facilities? More locations? More options? More coverage? Its strength lies in abundance. If enough pathways exist, people are likely to find one that works. Optimization asks, can we provide better? Better integration? Better design? Better predictability? Better coordination? Its strength lies in coherence. People should not need to search in the first place. These are not merely technical approaches. They are different philosophies, different ways of reducing uncertainty. Expansion reduces uncertainty through abundance. Optimization reduces uncertainty through design. Nature itself employs both strategies. Forests produce vast numbers of seeds. Abundance creates resilience. Yet ecosystems also evolve intricate forms of organization and efficiency. Optimization creates coherence. Both can succeed. Both involve trade-offs. The visible outcomes may sometimes look similar, yet the philosophies behind them differ significantly. And those philosophies shape how dependence, burden, and uncertainty are experienced. As we move forward, another distinction begins to emerge. Not only how systems are organized, but what they are trying to optimize in the first place. Human experience, or system performance. And that question takes us into the next stage of the journey. As we continue deeper into the framework, another tension becomes visible. What exactly should civilization optimize? At first, the answer appears obvious. Surely systems should optimize for people. Yet every society eventually encounters a reality. Resources are finite. Trade-offs are unavoidable. Constraints exist. This creates a recurring tension between two legitimate goals: human experience and system performance. Human experience systems ask, what does the person experience? They prioritize comfort, convenience, ease, predictability, dignity. Their focus is reducing friction in everyday life. System performance systems ask, what does the system require? They prioritize sustainability, resilience, stewardship, efficiency, long-term viability. Neither perspective is wrong, yet they often pull in different directions. A highly comfortable solution may require more resources. A highly efficient solution may require more adaptation from users. Civilization, therefore, becomes an ongoing balancing act, not between good and bad, but between competing goods, between making life easier today and ensuring systems remain sustainable tomorrow. The balance chosen reveals something important, not simply what a society can do, but what it values. And values, as we have seen, shape everything that follows. This tension can be understood in another way. Some societies tend to behave as friction reducers. Others tend to behave as reality managers. A friction reducer begins with the individual. Its instinct is to ask, how can this experience become easier? How can burden be reduced? How can uncertainty be minimized? How can dignity be protected? Its emphasis is care. The system adapts to people. A reality manager begins elsewhere. Its instinct is to ask, what constraints must be managed? Resources, costs, responsibilities, trade-offs, long-term sustainability. Its emphasis is stewardship. People and institutions adapt to reality. The distinction is subtle, yet it appears repeatedly. A friction reducer seeks to remove burden. A reality manager seeks to determine where burden should reside. A friction reducer asks, how can difficulty be reduced? A reality manager asks, how can difficulty be carried responsibly? Both perspectives contain wisdom. Neither is sufficient alone. A society focused only on reducing friction may become disconnected from constraints. A society focused only on constraints may become indifferent to human experience. Civilization succeeds not by choosing one side, but by balancing care with reality, compassion with stewardship, ease with responsibility, and that balance reveals far more than policies ever can. One way societies respond to dependence is by placing more burden on the system itself. In these societies, institutions seek to absorb uncertainty before it reaches the individual. The citizen experiences simplicity. The system experiences complexity. The person encounters a clean facility. Behind it lies planning, maintenance, funding, standards, coordination, oversight. The experience feels effortless. The effort has simply been relocated. This reveals one of civilization's great paradoxes. The easiest experiences often require the most sophisticated systems. A reliable train service appears simple. A functioning healthcare system appears straightforward. A predictable public facility appears ordinary. Yet behind each lies a remarkable amount of hidden work. The smoother the experience becomes, the more invisible the supporting architecture often becomes. This is why successful systems are frequently underestimated. People see the ease. They do not see the complexity absorbed on their behalf. The burden never disappears. It merely moves. In these societies, institutions carry more of it. Citizens carry less. The result is often a calmer, more predictable experience of daily life. Not because reality became simpler, but because complexity was absorbed elsewhere. Not every society reduces uncertainty through refinement. Some reduce uncertainty through abundance. Their philosophy is fundamentally different. Rather than asking, how can every experience be optimized? Fifth, how can enough provision exist that access becomes likely? The focus shifts from precision to coverage, from refinement to scale. Scale carries burden differently. Instead of ensuring that every facility performs identically, it increases the number of facilities available. The probability of access becomes the solution, not certainty through design, but certainty through abundance. Nature often employs the same strategy. Forests produce vast numbers of seeds. Oceans produce immense numbers of offspring. Resilience emerges through quantity. Civilizations sometimes do the same. Coverage itself becomes a form of reliability. If one pathway fails, another may exist nearby. If one facility is unavailable, alternatives remain. The strength of this approach lies in accessibility. Its challenge lies in consistency. Experiences may vary significantly. Quality may be uneven. Variance may increase. Yet the underlying philosophy remains coherent. Uncertainty is reduced not by eliminating variability, but by ensuring sufficient abundance that people are likely to find a workable solution. The destination is similar. The path is different. A third philosophy emerges neither from optimization nor scale. It emerges from stewardship. Its central belief is simple. Quality exists because somebody continues to care for it. Resources do not maintain themselves. Standards do not preserve themselves. Excellence does not sustain itself. Someone must remain responsible. Someone must continue the work. Stewardship carries burden through accountability, through maintenance, through preservation, through care extended over time. Its focus is not simply building, but sustaining. Not simply creating, but protecting. This perspective recognizes a truth often overlooked by modern societies. Building and maintaining are different achievements. Founding and preserving are different skills. Innovation often attracts attention. Maintenance rarely does. Yet civilization depends upon both. Without stewardship, roads deteriorate. Facilities decline. Systems weaken. Trust erodes. The visible world slowly drifts away from the standards that created it. Stewardship, therefore, performs a quiet but essential role. It carries the burden of continuity, the burden of preservation, the burden of ensuring that what exists today remains available tomorrow. And perhaps this is one of the least celebrated yet most important forces within civilization. Not the act of creating excellence, but the commitment to continue caring for it. By this stage, we have explored three distinct ways societies absorb burden. The system carries it. Scale carries it. Stewardship carries it. The final stage of the journey asks a larger question. What do these different approaches reveal about civilization itself? Having explored burden, uncertainty, trust, governance, stewardship, and dependence, we can now return to the different civilizational profiles with fresh eyes. Earlier in the journey, it might have been tempting to ask, which country performs best? Which system is superior? Which model should be copied? Yet the deeper purpose of this framework was never ranking. It was understanding. The question is no longer, which country has the best toilets? The question becomes, how does each society organize human dependence? Because beneath every visible system lies an answer to the same recurring questions. Who carries the burden? How is uncertainty distributed? How is dignity protected? Different societies answer these questions differently. Some emphasize anticipatory care. Others emphasize scale. Others prioritize predictability. Others stewardship. Others sufficiency. Each reflects a different philosophy about what society should do when people become dependent. The visible facilities are simply manifestations of those choices. This perspective changes comparison itself. Instead of judging outcomes alone, we begin asking, what assumptions are operating here? What burdens are being absorbed? What trade-offs are being made? What vision of human life is being expressed? At first glance, societies appear very different. Yet beneath those differences lies a common challenge. Human beings are dependent creatures. Every civilization is attempting to answer the same problem. The answers differ. The question remains the same. As we step back, the entire inquiry begins to appear as a single structure. What began with a public toilet gradually revealed layer after layer beneath everyday experience. Facilities, maintenance, governance, trust, values, care. What once appeared separate now forms a coherent whole. Every facility is the visible expression of something deeper, an invisible architecture shaping how people experience dependence, uncertainty, and dignity. Civilization does not eliminate human vulnerability. It organizes its consequences. That is why the toilet proved so revealing. Not because it is important in itself, but because it exposed the roots beneath ordinary life. And those roots ultimately led us here, to the architecture of civilization itself. After all the layers have been explored, a single question remains. A question larger than infrastructure, larger than governance, larger than politics. A question about civilization itself. What should a society do with human dependence? Every civilization answers this question. Some answer through institutions, some through care, some through scale, some through stewardship, some through markets, some through communities. Yet none can avoid answering, because dependence itself is unavoidable. Human beings require food they did not grow, roads they did not build, electricity they did not generate, systems they did not create. No amount of wealth removes this reality. No amount of technology eliminates it. Civilization begins when dependence becomes organized. The moment people create systems to help one another navigate vulnerability, civilization emerges. This perspective also changes how we think about progress. Progress is often measured through growth, technology, power, infrastructure. These things matter. Yet a deeper question remains. Has dependence become easier to navigate? Has uncertainty become less burdensome? Has dignity become more secure? Because ultimately, every civilization confronts the same challenge. Human beings need one another. Civilization is the ongoing attempt to organize that reality wisely. And now we arrive at what may be the deepest moral question in the entire framework. How much uncertainty should a human being be expected to carry simply to live an ordinary life? This question reaches beyond engineering, beyond governance, beyond economics, beyond politics. It enters the realm of ethics, because dignity becomes visible precisely when people become dependent, when they need healthcare, transport, education, public services, assistance, or simply a toilet. The issue is not dependence itself. Dependence is universal. The issue is the experience that accompanies it. Will dependence become stressful, humiliating, confusing, uncertain? Or will it remain predictable, respectful, and manageable? Different societies answer differently. Some seek to reduce uncertainty wherever possible. Others place greater emphasis on autonomy. Others attempt to balance both. There may never be a perfect answer, yet the question itself remains indispensable. This is because vulnerability reveals priorities. What a society protects when people become dependent reveals what it truly values. Declarations are easy. Policies can be written. Principles can be proclaimed. The deeper test occurs in ordinary moments of vulnerability. Those moments reveal whether dignity is exceptional, conditional, or universal. And perhaps that is why this question matters so much. Because dignity is not ultimately measured during moments of strength. It is measured during moments of dependence. The journey began with something small. A public toilet. An ordinary facility. An everyday experience. Something so familiar that most people rarely think about it until they need it. Yet that small moment revealed something much larger. Not about sanitation. Not about infrastructure. But about the human condition. Along the way, we discovered a chain extending from facilities to design philosophies. From burden to uncertainty. From trust to governance. From governance to values. From values to deeper assumptions about reality itself. The toilet was never the destination. It was the doorway. Because beneath every society lies the same reality. Human beings are vulnerable. Human beings depend upon one another. Human beings require systems larger than themselves. No civilization escapes these facts. No technology eliminates them. No amount of wealth removes them. The challenge is not whether dependence exists. The challenge is what happens when it does. And that brings us to the final question. A question that sits quietly beneath the entire presentation. A question every civilization must answer. A question every system, institution, and community answers whether consciously or not. When a human being becomes dependent, what happens next? First, allow the question to settle. Because the answer is not found in monuments. Not in wealth. Not in power. Not in technology. The answer is found in the ordinary experiences of ordinary people. In the ways societies respond when people need help. When they become vulnerable. When they must rely on systems larger than themselves. And perhaps that leads us to the simplest and deepest definition of civilization. Civilization is what happens next. That is the true subject of this presentation. Not the toilet. Not the facility. Not even infrastructure. But the collective human effort to ensure that dependence remains dignified, that uncertainty remains bearable, and that vulnerability does not become humiliation. The objective was never persuasion. It was illumination. And perhaps, after this journey, we may never look at ordinary things in quite the same way again.